For those of you joining us, we'll wait a few more minutes as we know a few folks are still coming through. So just be patient and we'll get started shortly. Well, by my computer, I have 2 after, so I think it's about time for us to get going. And there may be other people joining us as we go. I'm Jenny Heiser, Executive Director for Communicators for Women Religious, and I know you're used to probably seeing Rob Cogswell, the co-chair of our Education Committee, serving as facilitator. He unfortunately was not able to do so today, so I told Sarah that she's stuck with me, but hopefully I'll be able to whittle my way through. I have certainly a better appreciation for the things that Rob does and has done for us as facilitator. So I'd like to start this morning or our session this afternoon with an opening prayer. So would you please join me? O Lord, the creator, the giver and sustainer of all life, you are the God who awakens the earth and all its creatures from their winter slumber. You bring forth each spring life and turn its still and icy nights into the choruses of song. You fill the empty branches of trees with the source of all the world's life. The animals make their way from their winter homes to the fields and streams, overflowing with the winter snowmelt and the spring rains. How can we experience this rebirth, this new life, this spring, this transformation? How can we experience it each year and not immediately turn to the new life given to us through your Son, Jesus? Your Son's return to life on that spring morning is a promise to us who put our faith in him, that we too will not be bound by the eternal winter, but will one day live forever in a place where there will be no winter, where there will be no death, but only life found on the best spring day ever, and that one will never end. Amen. That was a poem for a spring day by Michael Perry. And where I am, it's a beautiful sunny day. It looks like in Austin, Texas, where Sarah Rose, our presenter, is the sun is shining as well. We're going to hear from Sarah first, and then we'll have time for Q&A, but please feel free to put in the chat your questions at any time, and then we'll circle back to them during that Q&A time. Just a reminder that any resources that she shares, her PowerPoint presentation, will be made available along with the webinar recording. And then we always send out post-webinar a survey just so that we could get your thoughts and ideas for subsequent educational offerings. So enough from me. I want to introduce Sarah Rose, who is Director of Communications and Senior Consultant for Petrus Development. She's joining us today to discuss major gifts. And first, a little bit about Petrus Development, which is, according to their website, driven by the simple idea of that ministries with more money can accomplish more. And I was very impressed. If you read through their mission statement, their focus is really helping Catholic ministries build sustainable development programs. Since their founding in 2005, they've worked with over 150 Catholic ministries and raised over $500 million. So that's quite a substantial amount of helping those ministries do the work that they need to do. Sarah, who's joining us today, has more than 12 years of professional fundraising and communications experience. As a lifelong Catholic, she sees her work in fundraising as a way of living out her own call to bring holiness and service to the church. Sarah's consulted with numerous Catholic organizations, sharing her expertise in developing sustainable development programs. She's also worked with prospect engagement and cultivation and board training, major gift solicitation, grant writing, donor communications. Anything else in there I should add, Sarah?
All the things.
All the things. Sarah holds a bachelor's degree in communication from St. Edward's University. And today she's joining us from Austin, Texas, where she lives with her husband and 3 whom she calls mischievous children. So Sarah, thanks for being with us today. And
thank you, Jenny. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's all right. And yeah, bear with me for just a second while I get that up. Okay. There we go. Can you guys see that okay? Awesome. Well, thank you, Jenny and everyone for inviting me here. And I'm excited to spend this hour with you guys talking about asking for money, which is a topic I like to talk about. I know a lot of people don't like talking about asking for money. And my hope is that by the end of this presentation that maybe you don't move straight to enjoying it, but at least that we take the fear out of asking. Oops, skipped ahead. Like Jenny said, you did a great job introducing Petrus Development. We are a team of fundraising consultants. We've been around since 2005. I've been with Petrus for 12 years now. And we work with Catholic and faith-based ministries to form, build, and grow by teaching them to raise more money through best practices and sustainable fundraising strategies. We bumped that number from 150 up to 1,000 organizations, which is a big jump, but we started working with NCEA, the National Catholic Education Association. So now we can say that we've worked with hundreds of Catholic schools in training and providing them resources to do better fundraising. But all in all, Petrus really prides itself on being education-based. We know there's lots of fundraising consulting firms out there who will come in and raise lots of money for your ministries. And Petrus is very much so a teach to fish kind of consulting company. So we do provide free education all year round. So check that out if this is a topic that is of interest to you or is helpful. We have so many more resources on our webpage at petrusdevelopment.com/education. So today I'm going to talk about don't be afraid to ask. I'm going to talk about the art of the ask, 3 steps to asking, and overcoming obstacles. The first part is this, the art of the ask. And I think it's important we start with, why do people give? And we know that people give to act on an emotional connection or link. They give to make a difference or to change lives. They give to respond to or support people with whom they have a connection. But first and foremost, the reason people give is because they are asked. As much as we would love for people who are excited about the work that we're doing to be proactive and come to us and say, I'd like to give you some money. How much money do you need? It just doesn't happen. And we know the number one reason why people don't give isn't because they don't want to give to your cause. It's not because they don't have the money. It's because they were never asked. So we're going to dive more into this aspect, but effective fundraising really at the core is about aligning these 6 rights. It's the right person asking the right prospect, the right donor, for the right gift, for the right project, at the right time, in the right way. I heard another great speaker, his name's Guy Malabone up in Canada, and he talks about these are the 6 moons that have to align in order to be effective in your fundraising efforts. And it can be kind of daunting, but we're going to get more into that later. When you're building up to your ask, it's important that first we have the right prospect, right? And so who is a good prospect for a face-to-face solicitation? And I would, your face-to-face solicitations are typically your major gifts, right? Or your capital campaign gifts. So the right prospect, a good prospect, is identified by the LIA principle. And maybe some of you guys are familiar with this. LIA stands for L, linkage to your ministry. I is interest in the ministry. And A is ability to make a gift. So capacity is the ability to make a gift. And so when you look at your major gift levels, which is really different for every organization in ministry, when you look at your really big nonprofits, like think of Catholic Relief Services or CNUA, their major gift levels might be at 100,000, 50,000. Petrus works with a lot of much smaller nonprofit organizations. And so for a lot of our clients, a major gift level is $5,000. I have a client I was talking to just earlier this week, and their major gift level is $1,000. So that's a nuanced amount, and you'll hear all sorts of things about what a major gift level is, but it's nuanced, and it really depends on your organization and the health of and the history of your development program. So I invite you to not stick yourself in a box on what a major gift level is, but what is that for you? And so once you've set your major gift levels, you can identify the prospects who have the capacity to make gifts at those levels. And then that's where your A comes in. Inclination refers to an interest in the ministry, that I part, and a person with high capacity and no interest in, inclination to give, no interest in the ministry is not a good prospect, because they don't have any connection with you. However, inclination can always be grown, right? We can cultivate and build that relationship until there is an interest, if that's a possibility. There can be an interest in the ministry. While capacity, that's something we don't have any control over. So those are some things to keep in mind as you're thinking about who am I going to be asking for gifts face to face. In order to have success with those face-to-face conversations about giving, the keys to your success is your conviction and commitment to the ministry and the project. We know that donors give when we are enthusiastic. And I love that I discovered this a year or two ago, that enthusiasm means God within. And I just love that, because I think whenever, God is with us and enthusiasm is coming out of us, that's contagious, and our donors hear that, they see that, and they want to be a part of that. So along those lines, your own personal gifting, one of the things I suggest to anyone in the fundraising world is to start making a gift to the organization you're fundraising for. If you're struggling with doing that, you're not quite on board yet, start giving to another nonprofit. and see what it feels like on the donor side. I think that is really important, that we get a clear picture of what it's like on the other end. The other key to your success is the knowledge of and connection to those being asked to make a gift. So looking back at that LIA, and is this someone who has an interest in the ministry? Is this someone who has the ability to make a gift? Are they connected? And are you connected with them? Some quick high-level things to always remember that I think are important to remember before we start asking for major gifts is that the people you're asking have an expressed interest in the ministry, and they want to have a positive impact. We know that people give to religious causes more than any other cause, and they actually on average give twice as much. Like, we see average first-time gifts for nonprofits being around the $25 mark. We see first-time gifts to religious causes being around the $50 mark. So we know people want to give. They want to give to your religious causes. It's important to be clear and authentic. You enter the conversation with confidence and a sense of purpose. I like to share with all my development directors that authenticity and intentionality will always outperform perfectionism. If you are authentic and intentional in your relationships with your donors, it will only bear fruit. I can promise you that. If you just stick to those two things, you'll see great things happen. There may need to be several conversations with some prospective donors before they make a gift, talking about that inclination to give, that interest in your ministry. You might have to have a few conversations with the donor before they get there, or before you truly understand where that donor's at and what they're hoping to achieve with their gift. It's not the end of the world if someone says no. This is always a good starting point when we think about asking, is what's the worst that could happen? You might feel awkward, embarrassed, uncomfortable, but if that's the worst that could happen, I think we're doing okay, I have yet to have anyone, scream at me, throw me out the door, do any physical harm. It's really not the end of the world if someone says no. And the last one, prospects will not make a gift unless they are asked. Like I mentioned before, the number one reason why people don't give is because they were not asked. I can't emphasize that enough, that's the number one reason why people say they didn't give. It was not because they don't have the money, they don't have the interest. It's because they were never invited to give. So when you're asking for donations face-to-face, you're giving people the opportunity to invest in the future of the ministry and to experience the joy of giving. And I really want to emphasize that joy of giving. We know that people who donate, who give of their time, talent, and money, that they are happier, that they're giving to something bigger than themselves. And one of the things that I've seen during COVID, and I'm sure some of you have seen it too, is an increase in generosity. And I think this might sound kind of bizarre, but I think during this time of healing that the world hopefully is starting to go through, that there's an aspect to that of giving of ourselves. And when we invite people to give of themselves, especially in the United States, where we have so much wealth and so much material things to give, I think people really want that right now. They're really yearning. They're yearning for that invitation right now. And I'm seeing that in my personal experiences with donors over the last 2 years, and so are my clients. So that just drives me even more to, do things like this webinar, to invite people to ask, because I think people are yearning for it. So let's dive into the conversation when you are making an ask. I broke this down into 3 steps. We're going to talk about before the visit, during the visit, and after the visit. So step 1, preparing for your visit. When you're preparing the strategy for your meeting with a donor, you want to determine who's going to be present. Is it going to be Sarah and Jenny? Is it going to be Sarah and Father Paul over here? Or is it going to be Sarah by herself? Who's going in? And who's going to say what and when? I highly suggest, outlining out what your desired outcomes and the key messages are that you want to convey. I always say, what are 3 things you want the donor to know? And what are 3 things you want to ask of the donor? So for example, the 3 things you want the donor to know is 1, that you're so thankful for their last gift. 2, the impact that their last gift had. And 3, I want them to know about this pressing need, this new need that we have going on. And I want to make sure I walk out of there finding out, 1, is the donor interested in this need? Are they, do they have a connection with music? Are they interested in music? I want to gauge that. I want to find out if, they have the capacity to give. So I want to ask questions about what's going on in their life right now, and if they have any big financial commitments coming up or that they're currently committed to. And I want to find out if we can meet again, when I can ask them for a gift. So I want to outline those out. I want to know who's going to be there. And I want to say, okay, Jenny, you're going to share, about the need. I'm going to, say thank you. And Jenny's going to talk about the impact, and we're going to outline it out. So that way we can be intentional in our meeting. We want to be clear about the ask amount. And I'll talk more to this later about how you determine the ask amount. But we want to be clear. We don't want to ask a broad question like, would you be willing to help us out? That doesn't invite the donor to make a donation. That invites the donor to say, yeah, I want to help. How can I help? And then you have to be clear, right? And then I want you to think about how you will respond to objections and questions. We can't always get in the donor's head and know what their objections or questions are, but we can, maybe guesstimate and have some ideas of what could be possible objections or questions. And so let's think through those and be prepared for those. So we want to set up by telling the prospect why you're coming. So before the visit, which could be a whole webinar in itself, and if you really want to dive into like how to get the visit, I highly suggest this book, Opening the Door to Major Gifts by John Greenhugh. It looks a little outdated, but the content is very much still relevant. And it's about mastering the discovery call. As you can see, mine's all marked up. I keep it by my desk because I reference this all the time. That's a great resource if you want to dive into how do I even set up the visit. But when you do set up the visit, you're going to tell the prospect why you're coming, and they're going to know, we're going to be talking about the future of your ministry or your parish. The examples I've got here is, I would like to meet with you to share some exciting plans for our parish or for our ministry. I would like your input and support for achieving some important goals for the ministry or your organization. So once you're at the visit, you're prepared, everybody knows what they're going to touch on, and now we got to implement it, right? So meeting with the prospect, this is broken out into 4 parts. The first part is opening and the rapport building. In a discovery meeting, which would be a first meeting you have with the donor, where the donor is discovering you and your organization and you're discovering the donor, this might be a much longer part of your visit. For a solicitation visit, you're probably looking at 10 to 15 minutes. It's, that banter back and forth. How are you guys doing? How's your day going? What have you been up to since last time we talked? We want to talk about their involvement in the ministry. If we aren't familiar with that yet, we want to find out, how did you get involved with Petrus? How did you first find out about us? We want to, did you get our most recent newsletter, or e-newsletter? Were you at the last event? What do you think? We want to learn about the donor and share with the donor. Another good rule of thumb here is you should be talking 25-30% of the time, and they should be talking 70-75% of the time. So we want to be active listeners during this part. We want to be picking up clues as to the LIA, of thinking about, do they have an interest in our ministry? Do they have an interest in this specific project that we're asking support for? Do they have the capacity to give? Did so-and-so just find out, did they just get a blowing medical diagnosis that's going to be financially straining? Are they about to send their youngest to college out of their number 5? We're listening for those things, and we're looking around too at their house and their office, like, oh, this is a beautiful picture. Where is that from? Oh, you own a home in Colorado that you go to every summer. That's great to know. We're observing and we're actively listening. And then we're going to move into the case. We're going to transition to, well, it's so great to see you, Jenny. I know it's been a while, but I really wanted to spend some time with you today, tell you about what's going on with our ministry. So let me outline the case. And talking about the case could be a whole other webinar as well. Your case is who you are, what you do, why you do it, and how people can help. So in our case, we're going to outline why we need support. We're going to, again, active listening. We're going to respond to any questions, concerns, or objections that they have. We put forward, what's a good example of this? Saying, Jenny, since last time we talked, we've had a strategic planning meeting, and the way we're looking at moving forward is we'd really like to start this new program or hire this new staff person. And we believe that starting this new project is really going to add to our mission. We're going to be able to serve more people. And we know when we're able to serve more people, we're able to bring more people to Christ. And that's what it's all about, right? We wanted this to be engaging and dialogue. And some examples of key questions to ask is, what do you think of the proposal? So the proposal being, here's how we want to move forward. This is the project we want to start. This is the staff person we want to hire. Another great question is asking, what are your philanthropic priorities right now? I love that question. We ask that during feasibility studies. And it's really great to get the donor thinking, do I have philanthropic priorities? What are they? Maybe I should have philanthropic priorities. Am I being intentional about my giving? And then asking, how does this project fit into your giving? What are your philanthropic priorities? Is giving to our ministry a priority for you? I mean, that's fine if it's not, and we want to know. So then we're going to get to making the ask. There's a bullet point here, ask permission to solicit a gift. And that really goes back to when you are setting up the meeting. You want the donor to know, I'm here to talk to you about our future plans and about how you can support it. So that's what that bullet point is speaking to. We want them to know we're going to come talk to them about a gift. We're going to ask for a specific gift. So, would you prayerfully consider a gift of $100,000? And then we're going to be quiet. That's the hardest part. It feels like eons after you make an ask. But the last thing we want to do is say, would you prayerfully consider a gift of $100,000? Because, with a gift of $100,000, we could, bring on that licensed mental health professional. And we all know that mental health is suffering right now, and this would just be amazing, blah, 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 blah. And then they never get a chance to respond. And next thing you know, you're not ending with a question and the conversation's still going on. So we respect the donor by being quiet and listening to their response. But this can be an area that a lot of people struggle with. So here's some examples of ways to ask. It is crucial to join in advancing this effort to enhance our ministry by your prayer, presence, and financial support. To join us in this journey, would you prayerfully consider a gift of X amount? And then silence. Given the impact of this renovation project that it'll have on our community now and into the future, would you consider making a gift of blank to support this important undertaking? Joe and Mary, for our ministry to succeed with this project, several people will need to lead the way with their giving. Would you consider being among them by making a gift of blank? These are all wonderful. And honestly, my go-to though is, would you prayerfully consider a gift of X amount? When I first got started in development, I was so anxious about asking donors for money, and I knew I had to get over it. I would practice every morning in the shower. Would you prayerfully consider a gift of 50,000? Would you prayerfully consider a gift of 25,000? Just to get used to saying it out loud. And it sounds so silly, but it was so helpful, because then when I would get in the meeting, even if nerves were getting the best of me, I could still make a direct ask and respect the donor by being intentional in that way. And then I could be silent. And once the words were out of my mouth, it was all good, So if that's what you need to do, don't hesitate to do that. It's fine. Practice. So now that you made the ask and you've been quiet so they can respond, you'll get, let's say, 3 different types of responses, right? They'll say yes, no, maybe. I've seen all sorts of different numbers on, what percentage will say yes and maybe and no. But across the board, it's agreed upon, less than 10% of people will say a direct no. It's very, very rare that you get a straight up no, because by the time you've gotten to this meeting, that there's an interest in your ministry, that there's the capacity to give, and a connection has been made. And so those things in mind, the individual wants to support, they want to give of themselves. So typically your answer is maybe, but let's start with the first one. So if the donor says yes, thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to thank them. Say thank you, say it over and over and over again. You can't thank them enough. It's awkward if you don't thank them. Thank them right away. Thank you so much. You can be assured of our prayers and our promise to put your gift to good work. And then we want to follow up, right? I have a pledge card with me. Would you like to fill this out together, or should I leave it with you and come get it from you next week? If we're going to leave a pledge card with them, we want to make sure we have an agreed upon time that we're going to get it back. So that I'm going to collect it from you next week. Is that okay? That's really important, because anyone in the development world will tell you there are times you make an ask, you don't make you don't know what you're doing. Then it's super awkward. I don't want to bother them. They already said yes. So I should just trust that they're going to send it, but we really need to know when that money is going to come in the door. So I need to find out. It's just better for everyone when we have an agreed upon. If no, that's really an opportunity to dive in more, right? Jenny, I know that this cause is really important to you. And so is it the amount that I asked for? Is there another amount that would be more appropriate for you, or another amount you'd be more comfortable giving? Jenny, I know that, last time we talked, it seemed like this was an amount that you were interested in giving. And I know that you're really supportive of this cause. Is there a different time frame that we should be looking at to make this gift possible for you? So dive in. When we talk about those 6 rights, the right person, the right time, the right project, each one of those is a thing to dive into if someone says no. Is this, I know you're really supportive of our organization. Are you having some doubts about this new project? Is it the project that is the holdup here? Let's talk about it more. So if maybe, right, the most common response you'll get is, we'd love to do something. Let me think about it. I need to talk to my husband or my wife. We need to look at our finances. We need to think about it. And that's fine. That means you're asking for the right amount, right? We want to invite people into sacrificial giving, and that's going to take them looking at their finances, talking to their significant others. So we want to respect that. Thank you so much. I totally understand. What's the best time for me to follow up with you, though? Again, we want to know what's the next step. We don't want to leave it in limbo, of like, okay, they said maybe they're going to talk about it. When are they going to reach back out to me? We want to set a time. Would it be okay, Brian, if I call you in 2 weeks, maybe Wednesday afternoon? Is that an okay time to check in? And that also signals to the donor, like, this is serious, this is important, and we're working on a deadline, right? And they'll let you know, oh, okay, yeah, we'll know by then, or no, we're going out of town, we're going to be gone for a month. Really, like, why don't you call me in 2 months, and then I'll have a better idea. It gives them an opportunity to share that. So the follow-up, step 3. So we talked about before the ask, during the ask, and now afterwards. We want to send an email or a written thank you note to the prospect. And in that note, we want to acknowledge the meeting. Thank you so much for meeting with me last week. We want to confirm the outcome. We're so grateful for your gift, or, I'll be following up with you in 2 weeks to talk more. If they wanted more information, provide any additional information. Here's, I wanted to send along to, here's a video that shares more about that program we proposed, or, here's another nonprofit that had success hiring a staff person in this position, and thought you might want to check out how that looks for them. You also want to document the visit. So ideally you have a donor database, and you want to document that visit in there, so that way it becomes organizational history, and anyone else in your organization can see, oh, there was an ask made, and here's what's next. Also, this last bullet point, apprise the appropriate people of the results of the meeting. If, John Smith from your board suggested that you meet with this individual who you just asked for a gift, we want to go back to John Smith at the board and say, John, thank you so much for introducing me to Brian. I just wanted to let you know, I met with him the other week, and it was a really fruitful meeting. Thanks again for the connection. Because this again builds confidence in our community and in our donors, that whenever they do, give us names and connections, that we're professional and we're following up with them, and they can trust us with their contacts. So why don't we ask? I really wanted to, Jenny and Brian were sharing with me that maybe everyone on the call here isn't so afraid of asking, but you might work with people who are afraid of asking, and haven't we all, right? You're asking a board member or volunteer to join you on a visit and they're like, I am not a fundraiser. Or you're asking the program director or the executive director to join you. And so I think it's important we dive into why don't we ask and how we can overcome those hurdles. Some of the these are the most common reasons that I come across and my team comes across as obstacles that people have with making ask. It's, we have too many other things to do. We haven't made it a priority. We're afraid we're going to get it wrong, right? And I think we have too many other things to do. I don't know about you guys, but springtime, it's like there's so much stuff going on. And, if you have a fundraising event or an appeal letter, it's all, there's always some other more concrete deadline that's pressing. It's like, oh, that appeal letter needs to get out, this month. So I'm going to focus in on that. Or, we got all this stuff going on with the fundraising event and that's happening on Wednesday. So I got to focus in on that. And so, I think that bleeds into, we haven't made it a priority. And so if we want to make asking a priority, then we need to make time for it. And I think a really good strategy is, I have a coworker who calls it her hot sheet. And, make a list of 10 to 20 people you want to visit and make a deadline, right? Like, I'm going to meet with these 10 people this month. That's not feasible, start smaller. I'm going to meet with these 10 people this semester. Before the end of May, January to May, I'm going to meet with these 10 to 20 people and write them out, and then, have a deadline, right? We're simply not comfortable doing it. Money is a very personal topic. It speaks a lot to who we are, what we value. And we all come with emotional baggage when it comes to money. There's a lot there. So it's not uncommon that we're just uncomfortable talking about money. We want more data because we're worried we might be asking at the wrong time for the wrong amount with the wrong person. Or like I said before, they might tell us no. So how do we get over these hurdles? And I'm sharing again, my hope is, if these aren't hurdles for you, that, these suggestions for overcoming these hurdles are something that you can share with others. So there's one obstacle, it's not comfortable, right? We're not comfortable talking about money. The solution is make more ask, right? It seems kind of counterintuitive, but you're not going to become comfortable overnight. It's just not going to happen. The only way you're going to get comfortable is by doing it over and over again. Practice in the shower, practice with your coworkers, practice with your friends. Hey, I have this new role and I have to ask for some gifts and I'm really uncomfortable doing it. Would you mind if I, gave you my spiel and made an ask of you, and just so I can get more comfortable? I know you all have friends who would be willing to do that for you. And, just practice, and warm up with the easy ones. Go visit with the people that are your top donors right now, who are on your board or your advisory council now, and practice with them and warm up with them. We all go through ebbs and flows of being comfortable making asks. Sometimes you get away from, those direct asks and you kind of get out of sync with it. You just have to start back up again, and know, like, I'm going to need a little bit of warm up. So maybe I should meet with these donors first, these easier donors first, and then do these ones that I'm not as connected or don't know as well. It's just like working out. I have discovered like I gotta, exercise like every other day, or I turn into a very mean, angry mom. But I don't like working out. It's not enjoyable for me. Apparently it's enjoyable for other people, but it's not enjoyable for me. But every time I do, I say to myself, Sarah, this is only going to get easier the more you do it. Like lifting these weights is never going to get easy if I just don't do it, right? That's insane. Like, why would I think my muscles are going to grow not lifting weights, or why do I think, I'm not going to breathe so hard running unless I keep running, so repetition, make more ask. Yeah. And with your coworkers and peers, let them warm up with you, and share with them. It's uncomfortable for me sometimes too, to ask for money. You guys, you want to practice? Let's practice. Let's have some fun with this. Let's warm up. This other obstacle, we want more data. We want all 6 moons to align, and I just don't know. Like, I think this is the right prospect. I think they would be interested in this project. They seem like they have a high capacity. I just don't know. I want more data, and I love this image. The data says we need more data. I'm sure you all know people in your life that are like that. Like, I just need more information before I can make a decision. If you want more data from the donor, then ask the donor for the data. That's the best way to go about this. Meet with the donor more to find out from them, is this the right project? Is this the right amount? Is this the right time? Also, you're allowed to set a deadline for getting the data and moving forward with the ask. Yes, more data would be great. It would be great to have a better idea if this is the right project, if this is the right amount, and let's try to find that data. But if we don't have that in 30 days, then we're going to schedule an appointment, no matter where we're at. Because I think sometimes we get complacent, right? And we say, we push it off. And the longer we push it off, the harder it is to then reconnect with that donor. So set a deadline, and set a deadline with your coworkers and other team members who are involved. We might be asking at the wrong time for the wrong amount with the wrong person. This is really similar, right, to we want more data. Do your research. Look them up on LinkedIn, Google them. But there's wealth engines that you can find out people's capacity. Honestly, though, the best way you can research a donor is to ask the donor and to ask people who know the donor. I think we forget about that second one a lot. You can always go directly to the donor to find out more about them. But let's say this is a really high capacity donor who's really hard to get a hold of, and you might have one shot, right? Like, you finally secured that meeting with, I don't know, Michael Dell or, whoever, and you're going to get your 30 minutes. I don't have a chance to, go ask Michael Dell all the questions about, is he interested in this? Does he have the capacity to give to this? But maybe someone on the board knows him and I can pick their brain. Maybe I can talk to his coworkers or his friends. So don't forget about those connections and how you can visit with those people to find out more information. You can also use a gift chart or table of charts and lead with your most pressing need. So this is a tactic that I use a lot when we don't know what the right amount is. So instead of doing an ambiguous ask of, would you support our cause right now? Or could you help us? If you really have no idea, what this donor's capacity is, they seem really wealthy, but I don't know anything besides how much their home cost. And that home costs a lot of money. You don't know anything else. A tactic that I use is bringing along a gift chart or a table of gifts. It's the same thing. People use two different terms. I've got up here an example of one. And so this shows, right, I have a goal of $1 million. And so I'm going to share with the donor, my goal is $1 million. You know, here's the need, here's what we're fundraising money for. I'm telling them about the impact this project's going to have. And then I'm going to say, you know, Jenny, so like I mentioned, our goal this year is $1 million. And I'm going to pull out my gift chart, table of gifts on a piece of paper and say, so you can see, you know, that means we need a gift, at least one gift of 150,000. You know, we're going to need a few gifts of 75,000 and so forth. And so this is really our goals right here. Could you see yourself giving at one of these levels? And then be quiet. And so that's an opportunity to direct them to exactly what your needs are. And, you know, you're proposing a gift amount of you're basically giving a menu, right? Choose from the menu. What would you like to give to? But with the, you know, some people like to do wish list, and then you get stuck in these silos of restricted gifts. And, you know, if you can't get to your total, you know, that can be a really big headache. This is a much better option for asking for unrestricted gifts. Where do you see, could you see yourself giving at one of these levels? Or if you know, are maybe tuned in with a range, like I think this person could give 50 to 100,000. That's a really big range, right? We could say to them, you know, Jenny, we've been able to secure, you know, most of these gifts at, you know, these 4 lower tiers. And, you know, I've got someone who's pledged the 150. We really have a need, you know, for these 2 $75,000 gifts and these 4 $40,000 gifts. Would you prayerfully consider giving at one of these 2 levels? So again, you're dialing in on how this isn't just a number pie in the sky that you've come up with for this donor. You know, they're seeing how it fits into the puzzle piece of your total goal. So that's a tactic I use a lot. Because again, we've got to ask even if we don't know the capacity. We want all 6 moons to align, but it doesn't always happen. They might say no. Get comfortable hearing no. If you aren't hearing no, you probably aren't asking enough. And we learn from the no, right? When they say no, that's an opportunity to dive in. Is it the project? Is it the amount? Is it the timing? You know, all of those things. So we want to learn from those no's. It's not a failure if you get declined. It's a failure if you don't ask. And I want to end on, I'm like, oh, I'm running out of time for questions. I'm so sorry. I'm going to play this video. It's like 1.5 minutes just to give an example of this, and then I'll take questions.
Very early on, for sure in the first year of my being a development director, maybe the first 6 months, my boss had asked another priest if he would introduce us to some wealthy people that might like to fund our ministry. So he introduced us to 3 people of great capacity. We had no idea if they had inclination. So we met with this lady and her son. No connection to Washington University whatsoever. And we went in and we had a great connection with her. And we told her all about the Catholic Student Center. And she asked great questions. And it was just a lovely visit. And we left. And I would occasionally say, do you think we should go back and ask her for money? Do you think we should follow up? And Father was like, no, we want to give her some time to think about it. Because keep in mind, we were new at asking for money. Well, so eventually this woman gets sick. And, you know, I'm like, do you think we should go ask her for a gift? And, you know, my boss was like, well, no, it's not really appropriate when she's sick. We shouldn't ask her now. So it ends up she passes away. Fast forward a couple years later, and I get together with her son for lunch. And he's like, let me tell you. He's like, you guys came over and you did such a great job. And you left, and my mom said to me, how much do you think I should give to them? And the son said, I don't know. I mean, how much do you think you want to give? She goes, I think I'll give $1 million to them.
Oh my gosh.
And they never asked.
Wow.
They never asked.
Wow.
Don't be afraid to ask.
Oh. So now I go to questions, and yes, and I'll stop sharing my screen real quick.
So Sarah, there is a question in the comments. Amy asks, giving linkage to ministry is so important. Do you have any recommended strategies or best practices to help grow a stagnant or aging donor base?
That's a great question, Amy. So the way we can build connection is sharing the stories and experiences of our ministry and what we're doing. We know that the best way to grow connection is sharing experiences and emotions and those stories. Really, it's really about stories. Study after study shows that a narrative or a dialogue grows the strongest connections in our relationships. So the more, if you have a stagnant or aging donor base, there's lots of development strategies, right? Looking at communications, appeal letters, newsletters, e-newsletters, and use those as a way to tell stories. Start telling more stories if you're finding that they're stagnant. And and then when you see responses to those, right, you can look at who donates in response to those, who responds, who's opening your emails. Start diving into those people who you're getting responses from, even if it's not a donation response, any engagement. Pick up the phone, call them. Yeah, I think if you're already doing mailings and whatnot like that, and you're still seeing kind of a stagnant donor base, then it's time to pick up the phone and start calling people and saying, I just want to tell you about what's going on with us. Here's our update. One, thank you so much for, being a part of our community, for your support, your prayers, your financial support. And then two, I'd love to hear from you if, what do you know about what's going on from us? And that's a great way to gauge, are they reading my communication pieces? Are these speaking to them? And if they're not, I have an opportunity on the phone to bring them in.
Another question is more about the timing of the conversations. So how do you find that balance between staying connected and not being in front of that donor, and then bothering them too much? How do you know?
That is a great question. And I think, I think more often than not, we think we're bothering donors. And what I would say to that is, in this time and age, when people have the attention span of a goldfish, which is like official now, we used to have a longer attention span, but now we have the attention span of a goldfish. Repetition is so important. And so it can feel like we're overdoing it, but most of the time you're not overdoing it. It's okay to keep sending those mailings, those emails, those phone calls, until you find out from them, they don't want to be connected. Diving more into visits specifically, a rule of thumb that I follow is I'll call a donor and then leave them a voicemail that's pretty broad. Hi, this is Sarah Rose. I'm calling from Petrus Development. My phone number is 512-84, and that's it. Who I am, my phone number, and that's it. Or, hi, this is Sarah Rose. I'm calling on behalf of, Catholic Relief Services. And then I'll wait 2 or 3 days, call a second time. The second voicemail will be a longer one. Hi, I'm Sarah Rose. I'm calling on behalf of CRS, and I was calling in hopes of scheduling, 30 minutes to an hour of your time to bring you up to date about what we've been doing and some exciting plans we have moving forward. My phone number is blah, blah, blah. And then I'll wait 2 or 3 days and then call a third time. And the third one goes back to that first voicemail. This is Sarah Rose. Here's my phone number. And then if I have no response after 3 tries, I will take them off my list for 3 months. And then in 3 months, I'll call them again. If I go through this cycle 3 times and I have no response from them, then they're permanently off the list. That's a tactic that I use. And,
Thank
you know,
you.
as you get to know your donors more, you'll get a better sense for, you know, every demographic's different, every community is a little different. So you'll get a better feel for, yeah, what's resonating with them timing wise.
Great. Kenneth has an interesting question. He says, our religious order is shrinking fairly rapidly and aging. And as such, we don't really have new projects or programs to contribute to. We could tell stories about how we've helped people in the past, but there are no real new efforts on the horizon. How do I ask for a large gift in that light?
That's a hard question, right? And I think that's where, as a team, you know, as a congregation, you know, you have to take an inward look and say, yeah, what is it that we're asking donors to support? You know, what is our case for support? What is our need? And if the need is, you know, we have this debt or something, right? Like we have a community of retired religious who aren't active anymore, and you know, we still need to support them, and dive into that. Like, what is the need? If the need is to take care of retired religious, then let's dive into that and let's talk about that. You know, how, yeah, share those stories in the past of the impact that they've made, and you know, how we as a community want to treat, right, our retired religious with dignity and respect, and they deserve that. And you know, isn't that beautiful that we get to contribute to that? So that's a hard question, and if you want to dive more into it, I'm open, you know, shoot me an email, and I'd love to hear more about your specific congregation, and maybe I can help gear you towards what would be a good case for support, what would be a good key messaging for that.
Another question, are there tools or strategies that we can use to know whether our storytelling is hitting home, whether it's growing our donor base?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how do we know whether our storytelling is hitting home and growing our donor database? So we know our story's hitting home if we're seeing people donate, right? That's like the easiest connection we can make. And one way to take the guesswork out of, is it our messaging, or is it just, this was a bad time of year to send it out, is I would really, really highly encourage you to start to be consistent in your messaging so that donors can learn to expect it. So if that means you send an e-appeal once a month, you know, I'm not opposed to that. I don't think that's too often. But if you start doing it, you know, consistently at the same time, then you can take the guesswork out of, is this the wrong timing, or is it our messaging? And there's a gentleman, Tom Ahern, A-H-E-R-N. He's kind of eclectic. He's, you know, kind of an interesting character, but he is, I mean, he's written so many books on storytelling and writing your case for support, and he is an incredible resource. So I think if you're worried about, yeah, is our storytelling on? Are we communicating our case right? I would pick up one of his books.
I think this is probably going to be time for our last question. Sarah, how do you prep for like an on-the-fly conversation? Your major donor, you know, somebody that you've been working with, you're walking out of mass together, and they turn to you and say, "What's going on?" What would you do then? How would you handle that conversation, especially if they keep it going?
Yeah, right. Like when, yeah, you're walking out of mass, someone's talking to you. Yeah, what's going on? That's, you know, thinking through your case again, who we are, what we do, how we do it, or why we do it, and how you can help. And so that's an opportunity to share with them. Yeah, here's what's going on. We're working on this great project. We're really excited. We're, you know, we did this planning process, and we're hoping to build this new building, or, you know, hire this new staff person or whatever. And let's say they keep it going. They're like, oh, it sounds awesome. Like, what can we do to help? That's when you say, I'd love to talk to you about this more. Let's schedule a time to get together. What's a good time for you? And schedule a time, because when we're asking people for funding, you know, it should be respectful. You know, I think it's respectful to sit down and have an intentional conversation, and you can say that to them, you know, like, I really want to, you know, thank you so much for your support. That would be the first thing, right? If they're like, I want to help, like, thank you so much. That's awesome. I'm so excited that this gets you excited, because I'm excited about it as well. And so I'd love to sit down with you 30 minutes. You know, what's a good time? Maybe Thursday afternoon. Could I come by your house? What's easiest for you? Or a Zoom call, you know, whatever. Because yeah, I'd love to tell you more about the details and map out for you what kind of support we're looking for and how you could help.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Brian has been following the conversation and putting in the chat lots of links, one of which was Sarah's email. She has graciously said that she's there if people would like to follow up directly with her. And I think you're also going to stay on for a couple more minutes at the conclusion if people want to chat further. Is that correct, Sarah? For
Yes,
just a few?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
I can do that. Yeah,
Okay.
and like I said, you know, Petrus is very much a teach to fish organization. Everyone on our team is very generous with their time and resources. You know, don't hesitate to reach out, and yeah, anything we can help with, we're there to help with.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. Again, the participants will receive a survey, and then the resources and a link to the video, the recording. So again, Sarah, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your expertise. And we do appreciate all that you've done and shared with us today.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone, our next educational offering is going to be May 11th. I think Brian has a screen on that. That is promoting your message against opposition, and that will be presented by Kate McAlee, who is Executive Director of the Women's Ordination Conference. So hopefully we'll see you then if that fits your schedule. Again, thanks for joining us today, and Sarah will stay on. I see a couple of folks popping up in the chat if we'll catch those, Sarah. So, thanks all. Take care.
Bye.